I used to think asking for help was a sign of weakness, that my anxiety was some personal failing, a battle I was supposed to fight alone in the dark and win with sheer willpower. I was convinced therapy was for other people, and medication was a dangerous crutch I'd never be able to walk without. I was terrified, and I was so wrong. This is the unfiltered story of how I stopped fighting, started asking for help, and finally turned on the lights. For years, my anxiety wasn't just a feeling, it was running my entire life. It built these invisible walls around me, brick by brick. On the outside, most people probably just thought I was fine, maybe a little quiet or flaky for canceling plans again. But on the inside, a constant, high-frequency hum of fear was running at all times. My world was just a landscape of what-ifs. What if I say something stupid in this meeting? What if that person who just walked past is judging me? What if I have a panic attack right here in the middle of the grocery store? That last one was a big one. The grocery store became a total battleground. The bright lights felt like an interrogation, and the sheer number of choices. I mean, which brand of pasta would get so overwhelming my brain would just short-circuit. My heart would start to pound, not just beat, but physically slam against my ribs. My palms would get slick with sweat, my breath would catch in my throat, and I'd have to abandon my cart full of stuff I actually needed and just run to my car. I'd sit there, shaking, telling myself how pathetic I was. And that voice in my head? It was relentless. It was a 24/7 radio station broadcasting nothing but my worst fears and insecurities on a loop. It told me I wasn't good enough for my job. It told me my friends were just putting up with me. It replayed every awkward conversation, pointing out every single mistake. That voice convinced me that the safest thing to do was to make myself smaller, say no to opportunities, avoid parties, stay inside the prison it had built for me because at least in there, I knew what to expect. My entire world had shrunk down to my apartment, my job, and a few safe routes between them. And I was completely convinced this was just how life was gonna be. My breaking point wasn't some big cinematic explosion. It was more like a slow-motion collapse. I was up for a promotion at work, something I'd wanted for years, something I'd genuinely worked my butt off for. All it involved was giving a short presentation to a few senior managers. For a normal person, this is a standard career move. For me, it felt like a death sentence. In the 2 weeks leading up to it, I barely slept. I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. That 24/7 radio station of fear was now at full blast, just screaming at me. I rehearsed my presentation 100 times, but the words would just turn to dust in my mouth. The morning of, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and didn't even recognize the person looking back at me. My eyes were wide with a kind of terror that felt ancient and bottomless. My heart was racing so fast I felt dizzy, and I knew with this bone-deep certainty that I could not walk into that room. I just couldn't do it. So I called in sick. I typed out the email with trembling fingers, my mind just a blank wall of pure panic. The instant relief I felt was immediately washed away by this tidal wave of shame that was so deep, it felt like I was drowning. I had let my anxiety win. It had actually taken something from me, something tangible that I had earned. I just curled up on my floor and cried. Not just about the job, but about everything. About all the canceled plans, the abandoned grocery carts, the life I wasn't living. And it was right there at absolute rock bottom that a new thought finally cut through the noise. I cannot live like this anymore. The fear of staying the same had finally become greater than the fear of changing. Making that first call to a therapist was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I swear, my hand hovered over the phone for a full 20 minutes. All the stigma I'd held onto was bubbling up. Therapy is for weak people. You should be able to handle this yourself. But the memory of me crying on the floor was stronger, so I made the appointment. That first session was awkward. I sat there trying to explain the chaotic storm inside my head to a complete stranger. But she didn't judge me. She just listened. And then she introduced me to something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. I always thought therapy was about endlessly digging into your childhood, but CBT was different. It was practical. It felt like she was giving me a user manual for my own brain. She explained that it's not the event itself, like a work presentation, that causes the panic. It's my thoughts about it. My brain had gotten into these automatic negative thought patterns like, I'm going to fail, which then triggers the physical anxiety. CBT is all about learning to catch those thoughts, challenge them, and replace them with more realistic ones. My first piece of homework was just to write down my anxious thoughts. One was, If I make a mistake in this email, everyone will think I'm an idiot and I'll get fired. My therapist had me look at that thought like a detective. What's the evidence? Have I ever actually been fired for a typo? Do I think my coworkers are idiots when they make a small mistake? The answer, of course, was no. So the new, reframed thought became, mistakes are normal. If I make one, I can fix it. It doesn't define my worth or my skill. It sounds almost too simple, right? But it was revolutionary. I was learning that I am not my thoughts. CBT wasn't a magic cure. It was work. It took daily, conscious effort to retrain my brain. But for the first time, I felt like I had a strategy. I wasn't just surviving the storm, I was learning how to navigate it. The idea of medication scared me even more than therapy. The stigma around it is loud. Would it turn me into a zombie? Would it erase my personality? Would I be dependent on a pill just to feel normal? These were the fears that kept me from even considering it. But my therapist and I agreed that while CBT was giving me the tools, the sheer volume of my anxiety was so high that I was struggling to actually use them. So I went to see a psychiatrist who patiently listened to all my fears. She explained that the go-to medications for anxiety, like SSRIs, aren't happy pills. She put it in a way that finally clicked for me. They just help turn down the volume on the anxiety. That gives you the mental space you need to use the tools you're learning in therapy. We decided to start on a low dose of an SSRI. She was super clear that it wouldn't work overnight, that it could take 4 to 6 weeks to really feel the effects. She also warned me that things might feel a little worse before they get better. And man, she was right. Those first 2 weeks were rough. I felt nauseous, I had trouble sleeping, and of course my anxiety latched right onto that. That old voice in my head came roaring back. See, this was a mistake, this is just making you sicker. But I stuck with it. And then around week 4, something subtle happened. I was driving to the grocery store and I realized I wasn't dreading it. The automatic, gut-wrenching fear just wasn't there. I walked into the store, got my stuff, and left. It wasn't until I was putting the groceries away at home that I stopped and it hit me. I didn't have to give myself a pep talk. I hadn't felt a single jolt of panic. The noise wasn't gone, but it was quieter. It was like background music, not the deafening rock concert it used to be. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of what a normal brain must feel like. So, what's the after? It's not some perfect, anxiety-free wonderland. That's not how any of this works. The real transformation is in the tools and the quiet. The anxiety still shows up sometimes, but it no longer runs the show. A few months ago, a situation came up at work that was almost identical to the one that made me break down. A high-stakes presentation. The old me would have been in a 2-week spiral of pure terror. The new me? I felt that familiar flicker of nervousness. The what-if thoughts started to creep in, but this time, I had a game plan. First, the medication had the volume turned way down, so the thoughts were just a whisper, not a scream. That gave me the space to pull out my CBT tools. I caught the thought, I'm going to panic and fail. I challenged it. I'm prepared for this. I've given presentations before. Even if I'm nervous, it doesn't mean I'm going to fail. I focused on what I could control. My notes, my breathing. I walked into that room, and yeah, I was nervous, but it was just nerves. It wasn't that all-consuming, world-ending terror from before. I did the presentation. My voice shook a little at the start, but then I found my rhythm. And when it was over, I just felt this sense of calm pride. The prison walls were gone. My world is big again. I say yes to things now. I try new restaurants. I speak up in meetings. I didn't lose my personality. I feel like I finally got it back from the anxiety that had stolen it. Look, my journey isn't a prescription, it's just my story. It's a testament to the fact that change is really truly possible. If you're where I was, sitting on the floor, feeling like there's no way out, please hear me when I say this. You are not alone, and you are not weak. Reaching out is the single bravest, strongest thing you can possibly do. It's a journey for sure, but you don't have to walk it by yourself. If this story resonated with you, I've left some links to resources I found helpful in the description below, and I'd genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. Let's make this a space where we can support each other, because no one should have to fight in the dark. I used to believe my anxiety was a life sentence. Now I see it as just one part of my story, not the whole thing. The lights are on now, and while some corners still have shadows, I finally know where the switch is. And I'm not afraid anymore.